WWE legends explain why they'll never forgive Vince McMahon, and honestly, the stories behind it are wild. So let's dive in and break down all the drama that went on behind the scenes, away from the cameras. 1. Bret Hart. Bret Hart's story with Vince McMahon is one of the most personal betrayals in wrestling history, and honestly, it still hits hard even decades later. Bret wasn't just another wrestler on the roster. He was the face of the company, a loyal worker who carried WWF through some rough years. And because of that long-term trust, what happened in 1997 didn't just feel like a business decision to him. It felt like getting stabbed in the back by someone he treated like family. Going into the end of 1997, Bret had already signed a long-term deal with McMahon. He'd turned down bigger money from WCW because he believed in Vince and wanted to stay loyal. But things in WWF were getting tough financially, and Vince eventually asked Bret to break that contract and leave for WCW after all. Bret agreed, but only if they could work out a respectful exit, especially when it came to dropping the WWF Championship. And this is where everything spiraled. Bret didn't want to lose the title in Canada, especially not in Montreal, where he was treated almost like a national hero. It wasn't just pride, it was about protecting the character he'd built for years. Bret offered multiple solutions. He'd drop the belt the next night, he'd lose it in the US, he'd even vacate it, but he wasn't willing to do it in his home country at Survivor Series. Vince McMahon, though, didn't trust that Bret would do it, and instead of talking it out honestly, he came up with a secret plan. Only a handful of people knew. During the match with Shawn Michaels, the referee was told to call for the bell the moment Shawn locked Bret in the sharpshooter, even though Bret hadn't tapped. The crowd was confused, the commentators were stunned, and Bret was furious. That moment instantly became known as the Montreal Screwjob, a turning point in wrestling history. For Bret, it wasn't the loss that hurt, it was the deception. Vince looked him in the eyes earlier that day and promised everything would go as planned. Then he went behind his back and took the title off him anyway. Bret felt humiliated, betrayed, and used. And for a long time, he truly believed that no apology and no amount of time could fix what McMahon did that night. To him, it wasn't just wrestling politics. It was a personal betrayal from a man he once trusted completely. 2. Punk. CM Punk's run in WWE was a roller coaster of highs and lows, but the behind-the-scenes drama is what really left a mark on him. Punk wasn't just talented, he was passionate, vocal, and unafraid to speak up when things weren't right. That confidence earned him respect from fans and some backstage peers, but it also put him in direct conflict with management, Vince McMahon included. Punk has been very clear over the years. What he went through in WWE was more than just creative frustration. It was dangerous for his health, and he felt completely ignored. One of the biggest issues Punk had was the company's handling of his injuries. Wrestlers pushed their bodies to extremes, and Punk was no exception. But things got serious when he developed a staph infection while still performing regularly. According to Punk, WWE medical staff either downplayed the severity or failed to give him the proper care. He claims he was forced to continue wrestling at a high level despite being in real physical danger. To him, this wasn't just a case of bad luck, it was negligence. He felt that Vince and the higher-ups prioritized the show and the bottom line over the well-being of the people putting their bodies on the line every night. Then there's the creative side of things. Punk is famously outspoken about wrestling stories and character development, and he wanted to contribute ideas, but he often felt stifled. He believed that the company wasted his prime years by ignoring his creative input and limiting him in ways that didn't make sense. Punk has said he felt trapped, like he was working in an environment where his value was only measured by what he could do in the ring, not by his insights or his voice. All of these factors piled up. The combination of serious health concerns, ignored warnings, and a lack of creative respect made Punk feel that the system was stacked against him. By the time he walked out in 2014, It wasn't just a protest, it was a statement. Punk wasn't just leaving a job he loved. He was walking away from an environment he felt had been unsafe, unappreciative, and at times, downright toxic. For Punk, there's no coming back from that kind of treatment. The Montreal Screwjob may have defined Bret Hart's personal betrayal, but Punk's story is about a different kind of betrayal, one of trust, safety, and respect. That's why, even years later, he's still not forgiving McMahon or the company for what he endured. 3. Chyna. Chyna's story in WWE is one of both groundbreaking achievement and deep disappointment, and it's the kind of behind-the-scenes drama that really makes you think about the human side of wrestling. Joanie Laurer, better known as Chyna, broke barriers like no one else. She wasn't just a female wrestler, she was a force of nature who competed with men, dominated in the ring, and became a cultural icon. For a while, it seemed like the sky was the limit, but as incredible as her accomplishments were, the treatment she received behind the curtain left lasting scars. One of Chyna's biggest complaints was about compensation. She pushed herself physically in ways few could, carried storylines, and drew crowds, yet she consistently claimed that she was paid far less than her male counterparts. For someone who was literally making history in the company, that felt like an obvious injustice. Imagine building a legacy, breaking every stereotype, and still being told, you're not worth as much. That kind of undervaluation hurt, and it planted the seed of resentment toward McMahon and the corporate side of WWE. Then there was the issue of legacy and recognition. After leaving the company, Chyna felt that WWE actively tried to erase her contributions from their official history. She wasn't in DVDs, she wasn't in storylines highlighting past champions, and she felt sidelined from the very history she helped create. From her perspective, this wasn't just business, it was personal. It was a form of punishment, an attempt to rewrite history to suit personal grudges or corporate narratives. For someone who had given so much to the company, it was a gross form of exploitation and disrespect. What made this particularly frustrating for Chyna was how obvious her impact was. She shattered gender norms in wrestling, held the Intercontinental Championship, and competed with men at a level nobody had seen before. Fans loved her, sponsors wanted her, and yet the company's treatment didn't reflect her contributions. For Joanie, seeing her legacy diminished and her efforts minimized was not just disappointing, it felt like a betrayal. All of this added up to one simple conclusion in Chyna's mind. McMahon and the company didn't respect her, and they actively worked against her recognition. She had no reason to forgive them. Unlike a bad storyline or a lost match, this was about fairness, respect, and the erasure of someone who truly changed wrestling. That's why, years later, Chyna's story remains a powerful example of what happens when groundbreaking talent meets corporate politics, and why some betrayals leave wounds that never fully heal. 4. Sable. Sable's story in WWE is one of fame, glamour, and unfortunately, serious behind-the-scenes trouble. Rena Mero, better known as Sable, skyrocketed to stardom in the late 1990s, becoming one of the most popular female wrestlers of her era. Fans loved her charisma, her presence, and her ability to stand out in a male-dominated industry. But behind the glitz and bright lights, things were far from perfect, and the drama she faced would eventually lead her to take legal action against the company itself. In 1999, Sable filed a massive $110 million lawsuit against WWE, claiming sexual harassment, bullying, and unsafe working conditions. This wasn't just a small complaint or minor disagreement, it was a major public allegation that shook the wrestling world. Sable alleged that she was being pressured into storylines that were sexually inappropriate and demeaning, forcing her to perform in ways that made her uncomfortable. Backstage, she claimed that the environment was hostile, with bullying and harassment from those in power making her feel unsafe on a daily basis. For someone who was at the top of her game and had become a household name, this treatment was not only shocking, it was unacceptable. The lawsuit highlighted another key point: the unsafe workplace culture. Sable's claims made it clear that she felt the company prioritized ratings and spectacle over the safety and dignity of its performers. She argued that WWE management, including Vince McMahon, allowed or ignored behavior that put her well-being at risk, both physically and emotionally. For a performer giving her all every night, this sense of neglect and disregard was deeply personal. Eventually, the case was settled out of court, but the impact on Sable was lasting. The settlement may have resolved the legal battle, but it didn't erase the feelings of betrayal, fear, and frustration she had experienced. From her perspective, she had been exploited and mistreated by the very people she trusted to support her career. The whole situation left her with a lasting distrust of the company and McMahon himself. Sable's story stands out because it highlights the darker side of WWE at the time, a side that wasn't about storylines or championships, but about real human issues: harassment, power imbalance, and a lack of respect for performers. For Sable, the damage went far beyond her on-screen character. It was personal, it was professional, and it's a major reason why she will never forgive McMahon for what she went through. 5. Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks' time in WWE is a story of talent, ambition, and frustration, and it really shows what happens when creativity clashes with corporate control. Mercedes Moné, better known as Sasha Banks, has always been a standout performer. Her in-ring skills, charisma, and ability to tell stories in the ring made her one of the top stars in the women's division. But despite all of her success, behind the scenes, she faced struggles that went far beyond a single match or storyline. The most famous incident came in 2022, when Sasha and her tag team partner walked out of a taping. This wasn't a small argument or a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was the result of months of creative frustration. Sasha felt that the women's division, along with their championship, was not being respected. She believed that the creative team, led by McMahon, consistently sidelined female talent and treated their storylines as an afterthought. In her eyes, the women were putting in the same work, taking the same risks, and earning the same fan admiration, but the company wasn't giving them the recognition or opportunities they deserved. Banks has been outspoken about the systemic nature of this problem. It wasn't just one bad storyline. She saw a pattern where women's contributions were undervalued, and decisions about who could shine often came down to favoritism or outdated thinking. For someone who had worked tirelessly to elevate women's wrestling, that kind of treatment felt disrespectful and dismissive. It wasn't about ego. It was about fairness, acknowledgement, and being taken seriously as a performer. Walking out was a bold move, but it was also a statement. Sasha wasn't just quitting a taping. She was standing up for herself and for every woman in the division who felt overlooked. She risked her career to highlight what she saw as a serious problem: a lack of respect for female talent at the highest levels of the company. That frustration and sense of injustice left a lasting mark on her relationship with McMahon and WWE leadership. For Sasha, this wasn't about one argument or one missed opportunity. It was about years of creative disrespect and systemic inequality. Even after leaving, she has made it clear that she won't forget how she and her peers were treated. This combination of frustration, lack of respect, and gender-based inequality is exactly why Sasha Banks will never forgive Vince McMahon for how things played out during her time in WWE. 6. Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey's time in WWE is a story of athletic dominance, star power, and serious disagreements with how the company operates behind the scenes. Coming from a decorated MMA career, Rousey entered WWE as a global superstar. She wasn't just a wrestler, she was a household name, someone who could draw audiences on her own and elevate the women's division instantly. But despite her success, she quickly realized that the way WWE treated its performers clashed with her sense of fairness and professional standards. One of Rousey's main criticisms has always been WWE's business model, specifically the independent contractor system. On paper, this means performers aren't employees, they're contracted talent. But in practice, Rousey and others have said it often feels like being treated as employees without the benefits, protections, or security that come with a normal job. No health insurance, no retirement plans, and very little safety net if you get injured, all while being expected to perform at a world-class level night after night. For Ronda, someone who had experienced the physical toll of combat sports, this was more than a minor inconvenience. It was exploitative and unsafe. Rousey has also spoken about workplace culture. WWE is high-pressure, competitive, and intense, and she noticed a culture that rewarded loyalty to management over the well-being of performers. Injuries, scheduling, and personal limits were often secondary to the show's demands. Ronda found this frustrating because she respected her craft and her body, and she expected the company to respect her as well. Instead, she felt that performers were constantly asked to take risks while being denied basic security or recognition. This clash between her expectations and the reality of WWE left Rousey frustrated and disillusioned. While she achieved incredible milestones, winning championships, main eventing pay-per-views, and helping bring legitimacy to the women's division, she also felt that the company was fundamentally set up in a way that exploited its talent. For her, this wasn't just bad luck or a single bad experience. It was a systemic issue baked into the business model. Rousey's criticisms are blunt but clear. The structure and culture of WWE put performers in difficult positions and often failed to protect them. For someone as principled and accomplished as Ronda, that kind of treatment was unacceptable. It wasn't about a storyline gone wrong. It was about a company operating in a way that she saw as fundamentally unfair. And that's why Ronda Rousey has made it clear she will never forgive McMahon or the system he built, no matter what successes came her way inside the ring. And that wraps up today's video. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content.